Testing. Can everybody hear? Ooh, that always feels a bit uncomfortable because I know why Telkom calls me ma'am when I'm calling them. Much to my frustration when I hear myself like this. Oh, yeah. I'm a bit nervous, but my year's been fine. It's really been, I guess, one of the best years of my life, and I think I'm doing okay. I try to think about how I would describe how I'm feeling about what I've taken on, and the theme of education, you know, but I think at the end of the day, that's the best way to describe what's been happening. And when I was a kid, Jaws was the main fear instigator in my life. I couldn't even sit on the toilet because of the small body of water after I watched the movie. And to this day, I still can't swim alone in the swimming pool because of it. And I had a very inventive strategy of dealing with this. And what I did is I let the bath run in slowly, which was also very difficult for me to be in, and then I would lie in the bath. And I'd put the light off of the bathroom, I'd jump out quickly, put the light off, get back into the bath, and then I'd take a toy, one of my toys, and I'd hit myself on the arm with it until I couldn't bear the pain anymore. And I'd just keep on doing it until it felt like I was going to really, really cry. And it would be okay, because the shark had eaten me, and now I'm in the belly of the shark, you know. So we all have different ways of dealing with fear. I've been living in Johannesburg for most of my professional life, and I started off in animation, motion capture animation, and I did a collaborative master's between Rhodes University and the Tokyo Metropolitan researching a Japanese dance form called Anko Kobuto, which is my big passion. And I studied museum exhibition development and design in Sweden, really interested in how you engage a body in space. And I obviously came back and I was headhunted, and I entertained brats for 4 years, and I ran the design department at Vega, the brand communication school. And I guess I also did a couple of very interesting public engagement and public space art collaborative projects under the heading of Kaskuland. And most recently, I guess, I became a gun for hire, you know, an independent that'll do anything to keep the boats afloat. So yes, that's the creative director stint, you know, creating desire in people for things they don't really need. What a noble profession. And for the most part, creating what I refer to as eye candy, right? Yeah, I don't want to stand in front of people. I'll take more space. But something happened in the last incarnation as a creative director at a company called What We Want. A man came up to us and said, "Don't you want to market our electric bikes?" And I said, "Go to Cape Town. What are we going to do with electric bikes?" And having recently moved to Yeovil, my car was stolen, naively parking it on the street while somebody was visiting. How extraordinary. And I had 2 weeks of bad insurance, and I missed that car so much. It smelled like a holiday in the Kruger National Park. It was a vintage Mercedes. And my boyfriend had to drive me around, my colleagues had to drive me around, and it just became a bit much. And one lunchtime I jumped on the bike and I went to Woolworths. And 3 things happened. The first was what I call a mental and physical gear shift. You know, we're creative professionals that spend most of our days sitting like this, right? And then we have the gall to walk into offices with clients and say it's business unusual. Think differently, behave differently, huh? And in that moment with the bike, I was engaging my body and my mind in a completely different way. I think the body is very important here, but that's another talk. The second thing, obviously, that happened was that at the bottom of Suzman Road where our offices were, and I'd lived and worked in that area for 2 years, there was a tree that's twice the size of this building, right? I'd never seen it before, and I'd driven past it at least 4 times a day, every day for 2 years, you know. And there's a difference between looking and seeing, and it's something I touched on, the notion of relational sensitivity that's so important when you become a bit vulnerable to the environment that you're working or living in. And then the third thing, of course, I started calling it the real social network, because I wouldn't be standing here relating to you feeling slightly nervous and vulnerable. And every time I take the bike out, the encounters I have are extraordinary. The invisible walls inside of us, you know. And so I realized it wasn't about bikes, and I had to develop a brand strategy 101. Let's connect people, places, and passions. What a beautiful and noble idea. And of course, I realized that I know nothing about bikes, and I couldn't care less about the thickness of the tires or the power of the electric bicycle engine, except that I knew that this bike, charged in 4 hours, costs under 2 Rand to charge and can take you 65 kilometers. Now, there isn't a greener form of mobility, as far as I know, besides your 2 legs, and I really thought there's potential in this. And of course, the brand psychology was born, the notion of the psychologist. You get that. And I licensed the product in Africa, Middle East, Italy, and Spain, A to B, great bikes. Some of you will ride them with me. And the whole idea initially was the thrust of a philosophy called the life on 2 wheels, which really paid attention to the idea that we need to be in the moment more. And, you know, no matter which way you looked at it, I thought it was a good idea. I'm not a green mobility expert, you know. I clearly ride an electric bike. And, yeah, it started off with this idea, having studied museum exhibition development and design in Sweden, the first level of engagement would have to be an exhibition, wouldn't it? And we purpose-built this space around the corner called Window. And it was very much inspired by the work of Tokugen Yoshioka that he did for Hermes. You know, Hermes doesn't really spend money on advertising. They create extraordinary window installations with artists that then create a lot of PR. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to create a space in which I could do something like this? And so the way Window's exhibition program worked was, I take your car keys for a month, you ride the bike, based on your inspiration, you can come and exhibit in the space. The first of the exhibitions, of course, was just this extraordinary project called Bicycle Portraits, done by Stan and Nick Engelbrecht. They didn't need to borrow a bike. They already cycle commuters, which was just incredible in its inception. The next was Givan Lotz, an artist who made the space. His studio was too scared to ride the bike, which is a very valid response to it. And then, of course, Black Coffee Fashion Designers, a collaborator of mine at the time, developed a range inspired by the velocipedic creative side of cycling. And then Tonic designed an exhibition in there with some furniture pieces. And then most recently developed exhibitions with Quamta, a luxury goods manufacturer, and a beautiful little bag called Slit. You know, I don't see the rudeness in that, but after Food, Wine and Design and the commentary from the drunk passers-by, I got. So yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. Started a tour operation in Cape Town at Mount Nelson Hotel. My grandfather was a hotelier, so my business partner wanted me to have this place at the Cape Grace, and I didn't feel that was a real hotel. So the Nelly became our home. We've got an office there and a 40 bicycle tour operation. And we take people in and out. And we realized from the beginning that this would have to be about experience, you know. I can't do an improvisational dance on cycling. So this has become a principle that's really been very important. And we've got a fleet, which is kind of concierge fleet, and it's a kind of program called a session with a psychologist, where I take mid to senior level management out, and when I arrive they're laughing at what I'm wearing and how I'm talking, and after 20 minutes on the bike I take them into a workshop, and they're different people, and I talk to them about profit and purpose meeting, and I, you know, try and lay the green mobility egg. And every day of my life for the last 18 months I've been putting people onto bikes, and it's not a joke. Because everybody responds to the fear so differently. Some get a kind of arrogance or disdain. They feign knowing how to ride the bike, you know. Some just become outright nervous. Their mouth goes dry like mine is at the moment. Their hands start shaking, you know. Others just find it quite comical and cracks a joke at everything. And then my worst are the gung-ho types. And I can smell a faller like a fart in a car at this point in time. But the point is, I needed to find a way to deal with this being a punch bag for people's fear. Going into that moment, and they haven't been on a bike since they were 16 or 12, and all of a sudden, you're asking them to consider it as a real commuting option in this city. You know, and I take myself back to that initial bike ride in Bloemfontein, you know. My mom pushing me in the road, and then just that moment when she let go of the back of the bike. It was, you know, that realization. And I think deeply embedded in the physical experience, despite the adrenals working overtime, is just a sense of independence and an off-the-gridness, which you'll pick up in the kind of social phenomenon around cycling all over the world. And of course, I'm very passionate about this notion. And when I entered into this, had this idea, wonderfully departing from the creative communications industry, that I had a cause. I've got a purpose now. And I've got the possibility to make profit from it. And I find it so primitive, actually. And I've learned so much. But the place that struck us with the biggest problem and the most money, if we had to combine those two, was Sandton. 78% of people are stuck in traffic when they go into Sandton in the morning. 100,000 plus, it's actually 134,000 commuters driving in there with their car. And the average person per car, one, in a car that can take 6 people. 900,000 new square meters of development this year alone, a lot of it green buildings. Got a call from the Green Building Council saying, Vincent, we're building all these green buildings, but we're making completely unsustainable cities. So 3 days of your life on average in a month, if you're working in Sandton, will be lost to traffic. And 40% of people in that traffic experience the emotion hatred. Very interesting. Tom statistics, the emotion hatred. Haven't we got enough of that in ourselves, for ourselves? And then 1.1 billion rand is lost annually. It's 280 rand per employee, and that's for meetings that are missed and for coming late to work, you know, and that is just on the incline in our rapidly urbanizing spaces. 75% of us just wouldn't want that for ourselves. So I guess a movement was born called Decongest, and it happened organically, you know. I can't say there was a master plan. It was like, call it Decongest, make a hashtag out of those. You know, I start from the design perspective, and then I just decided that what I need to do is just do one thing regularly. There's one thing I learned, it's kind of like that Buddhist canon, like chop wood, carry water. When you're angry, when you're sad, chop wood, carry water. And I put up a station at 40 Upper Greyston in Sandton, and Fridays at 9, 12 and 2, I take people out to ride for free to show them that in 5 minutes you can get from one side of Sandton to the other, right? Instead of 45 minutes and then another 20 minutes to try and park. So what's happened with this thing is that it just got wildfire. We have more than 17.5 million rands worth of amps now because we became the darling. BBC is doing a special documentary. And if there's one thing that I got in life, it's this really big, juicy mouth. And I've been using it to get to places. This is kind of an overview of the stratagem. I don't want to go into it, but it started with a weekly bicycle ride, and it built community through that, which ended up in a campaign with kind of clever ideas, and I'm good at that. That'll come quick. And then a research project, because when I Google stats around urban commuting on cycles or e-bikes, I get a lot of fantastic Scandinavian examples. And then, of course, the launch of pilot programs, because this is all about experience, and you have to physically experience it. That's an example of what happens on a Friday ride when I take those corporates out in their suits and high heels. Yes, and a lot has been said about it.
Decongest is a green urban mobility project, and it's really aimed at changing the way that we move around our cities and CBDs. At the moment, we've focused it on electric bicycles, but we'll be extending it to other modes of transport. And it's really targeting the main question and problem we solve of traffic, congestion as well as livability of our cities. At the moment, you can spend up to 45 minutes traveling into Sandton, going 4 or 5 kilometers. You know, you can walk faster than that. It's the same with the
That's
CBD.
Warren Gray, one of our partners,
and we
Solid
like
Green.
Commuters to have better transport options.
The bike that we use on the tour specifically, and it isn't the only model available, is the A to B Metro, which is the world's first purpose-built electric bicycle.
And it goes on, you know, and the great thing is about these extraordinary partners. Ernst & Young piped up and said, can we become involved? The Green Mobility, the Green Building Council of South Africa, and a variety of others. And it's all of a sudden a game changer, you know, and I'm busy with this cause. But it doesn't sit right with me anymore, you know, this kind of polarizing that we always do between creative integrity, purpose, and commercial success, because it's not true. And the people that I've met during this cause that has gotten so popular have been monsters, you know, and most of those monsters are people in the not-for-profit sector, you know. The realization is that there isn't like a golden hot spot for this sweet spot to be found in this instance, but that we're both at once, huh? We really are. Whether you've got the cause or whether you're fighting for commerce, I think it's very naive to think that it's not the case. But at the heart of how we drive these things is this notion of behavior change, right? And it needs to start in the microcosm of who you are. Have you seen the size of the new Mercedes that I've got outside, you know? And I thought that to grow what Decongest was about, we'd have to do two things. We'd have to understand it's about thinking and moving differently, and about raising awareness of green mobility through 4 key areas. The one would be research projects, and pilot programs would be the second one. Pilot programs being the way we give people opportunity to experience what we're doing. And then, of course, there would be this very important public-private sector negotiation to get infrastructure development in. And then maybe there's an advisory or consultancy service, but the tool that we were passionate about using to start this dialogue was the bike, because it does pose very interesting questions in the kind of city that we live in. So the Urban Commuter Research Project was born, which is really cool, and we're just constantly documenting journeys and how these journeys are on the electric bikes, specifically at this point in time. It's qualitative, but this is a journey that we took just simply from Ilovo into Sandton, and it's 18 minutes less than by car. And the other day we had a competition with BMW and the Gautrain to see if you can get from Rosebank to Sandton, and the bike won, obviously. But I went to this international talk, and this woman came up to me like a real culture lady with the like suicide bob and the like interesting glasses and the frumpy clothing, like an a la model. And she said, "Hi, I'm from the WHO." And I said, Who? World Health Organization. And they developed this tool called the Health Economic Assessment Tool. And they've given us a lot of guidance in how to determine really what is at the heart of it. The argument is the return on investment. Because if I want to go to corporate South Africa, I need to go 4% of your building lives in Deep Sluit, 10% lives here. This is aggregating towards an understanding of your carbon footprint. How are you going to make a difference? So yes, the campaign side of it, at the moment, we're targeting the high LSM drivers in Sandton, because we think that they need to come to an understanding that they're not in the traffic, but they are causing the traffic. And that behavior change is amazing, because the uptake in the corporates, like Ernst & Young is now leasing bicycles, RHDHV is leasing bicycles. We've got so many supporters in the community there, and very interesting pilots are building on the back of that. And I mean, it's always very interesting to muse at yourself, you know, to muse at how fantastic the change is that you're bringing, right? You're still driving around with that Mercedes, and you tell people that you're taking that bike every day on your commute, but you're not. And did I press the wrong button? Okay. Anyway, it's Leanne's fault. So if we look at that cross-section within a corporate environment, there's this split, right? 1% is being used on the utilities. 9% is being used on the facilities, and 90% are being used on people. So when I go to the Ernst & Young building, the incredible new green building right opposite the Gautrain, which is extraordinary, it's like my office away from office, I feel really grown up when I'm there. And, you know, they indulge me as kind of interesting. And the reality is that where is the difference going to be made? And I had this eureka moment just yesterday, and I mentioned it to people this morning when I was waiting for this person for a meeting, and I was just like, that damn African time. You know, which you can imagine is the assumption I'm making when I'm working with the public sector as well. But you try and catch 3 taxis to be on time for my meeting. So the bottom line is the difference needs to be made on a large scale. And the pilot program which is driving this, which is really amazing, is the development of what we call green mobility hubs. And we're working with private sector and public sector negotiating this, but we're rolling out 11 solar-powered electric bicycle charge stations in Sandton over the first 4 months of next year. And they'll be placed as permanent facility infrastructure development at 9 buildings. And then some of them will be at current transport hub nodes like the Gautrain or the likes. And I don't know how I'm funding this. I'm kind of getting to grips with the technology side of it, and the locking mechanisms, and then reflects a very intelligent system to manage it. And I don't want to start a public bicycle share scheme in Sandton. I want to create an alternative for short distance commute in Sandton. So you arrive on the Gautrain, you use it for your meetings in that area. And I just want to get the facts and figures. Bike share schemes make no money. No money. You can go anywhere in the world. The Paris version, of course, made a bit of money because they went to the city and said, we'll do all the infrastructure, but you give us the advertising for every single station. So I'm selling that advertising at the moment, and, you know, underpinning it is this realization that we're not doing for, but we're doing with. And this is a very important mind shift, especially if you're in that cause kind of public sector-y space. You think that's important, but, you know, you always have to ground it in who you really are. The public-private sector negotiation and mediation is very difficult for me at times. You know, I'm seen as the enemy because I come from private sector. You know, it's that advertising-y guy, somebody who sort of knows about green mobility, and this is quite a challenging thing to see how the demonization happens from both sides. You know, so they're very skeptical of the mechanisms of capitalism. And you can imagine that from the Johannesburg Roads Agency through to the Transport Department, what challenges they face in the infrastructure. But with Ernst & Young, we've managed to broker these meetings where we kind of get people together. We call them Developing Cycle Cities meeting, and it's about giving the private sector the opportunity to put down money for infrastructure and other things that we're doing. And those are going swimmingly, right? Especially with the wild card, Lisa Seftel, who's the Director of Transport in Johannesburg. And yeah, what are those meetings about? Like a lot of placating, right? A lot of, but I've got a thrill for the kill, and as long as I get what I want, we'll do it. So the city is kind of really spearheading this at the moment, and you must understand that Mayor Parkstown in his State of City address 2 months ago said that Johannesburg will become a progressive cycling city. Quite extraordinary. And the amount of infrastructure development that's happening around this. We created a forum in Johannesburg called the Jozi Cycle Forum. It was actually created by Crispian Olver, who's facilitating this kind of stakeholder relationship meetings. Well, and of course, little interesting inventions like the Decongest, which is now becoming a not-for-profit on its own right. And then the Freedom Ride. I don't know if you guys have cottoned onto this. How extraordinary. It's this ride, and I'll show you more about it now. And currently, we're working on where the bicycle lane infrastructure should be spearheaded. The first lane is up between UJ and Wits. I don't know if you've seen it. There's 16 kilometers past 9 schools and the stadium in Orlando. Deep split to 4-ways is planned all the way out through to Steyn City. And these nodes are becoming a reality at some point in time. But if you build it, will they come? I doubt it. you know. And I think the behavior change is the biggest challenge. One of the big social engagement projects that we initiated is the Freedom Ride. And we had 8,000 people that came to the last ride, which is kind of a symbolic ride between the Nelson Mandela Bridge and the outcrops of Soweto. And this is organized by the city and very passionate people. And the next one will be in March next year in Sandton. And we're going to connect Sandton to Alex, which is very interesting. So the lanes are happening, and you can see them being planned. And of course, we're reimagining what Sandton could look like. And one of the most exciting infrastructure development projects that's happening at the moment is this Great Walk Bridge, which is running directly from Alex into Sandton. And it's the first piece of infrastructure in Johannesburg that's solely dedicated to cycling and walking. And it's run by RHDHV and the Johannesburg Development Agency. So the picture is getting bigger, and it all sounds so fantastic, doesn't it? And then we managed to get the mayor to sign the bid for what's called the Eco-Mobility World Festival. Quite an extraordinary thing that happens every 2 years. And the first one is called, the festival that they have is called 1 Month, One Neighborhood, No Cars. So what they do is they close down an entire neighborhood to car traffic to take it to a zero base, and then they use that opportunity to introduce technologies into that space. And this is happening in October 2015 in Sandton. And we started with the city to develop the plans of which roads will be closed down. And for Transport Month over that period, that'll be the case, you know. So it will look something like that without the cars. I couldn't get the appropriate picture. But, yeah. So 35,000 Rand bikes that gather dust in holiday homes in Teeson Island isn't really going to be the way forward, is it? So maybe we need an operational manager that can take care of psychology from January next year, because it hurts me when people call me and they bitch about the fact that their tire got a puncture, or they're screaming at me because they felt that their warranty needed to be longer. Because you must realize I carry and put every bike on the trailer at about 42 kilograms of pop. And I sell every bike, and I register every warranty. And I deal with the ingrained dissatisfaction of the middle to upper class, you know, the sense of entitlement spitting at you at regular intervals. And if we're really going to make a difference, we need to think about the technology as something that's more adaptable. And we're currently in the prototyping phases of a retrofit motor that goes onto an ordinary bike. But the way we've conceptualized it with Stefan Lippert, our designer in Germany, is to think of it as a battery instead of think of it as a retrofit motor. And the cycling charges the battery. It then enables you to cycle with better ease, but you can take the battery off into your home and you can charge the devices you have, maybe your phone or your something else. Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Anyway. So sometimes I'm at a loss about how wonderful it all is, right? And I have to deal with it every day. It's actually something that's only coming through to me now, is this notion of intention and consequence, you know? And it bugs me, and it gets me emotional, because you don't realize when we, for instance, designed the car, we didn't realize it would lead us to where it would lead us now. But how many lives did the car save? The same with the genetic modification of crops, which has saved millions of lives, and now will shortly, probably if you've watched Interstellar, lead us to a food crisis, you know. And I go out there and I preach thinking and moving differently every day, you know, and I'm doing it out of maybe an understanding of the cause, and sometimes I actually don't think I even care about bikes or non-motorized transport or green mobility. And it scares me, this compulsion with which I'm driving this movement at the moment, you know. I haven't quite got to grips with what we're creating. There was this guy that came up to me after a talk I gave about 2 weeks ago at the Energy Efficiency Forum in Cape Town. Older gentleman, he had a mangled face, quite a mangled face, and he had a stutter. And he said to me, you know, I'm a product of this movement. And he started telling me about how he was one of the first commuter cyclists that chose to do all his commuting on the bike. until he had been in a terrible, terrible accident. And he said when they scraped him off the pavement, that his one eye was looking there. His one eye was looking in the wrong direction. It's pretty scary for me, you know. And I'm not always sure what's at the heart of the matter, except that, you know, it can be really scary sometimes. And I've had moments of going, okay, just get off the bus, stop, all the support is there, all these amazing things are happening, but what are we creating? And I can't anticipate it really, but I sometimes really just wanted to stop. And then on the flip side of that, very recently, I jumped into the pool and I wasn't scared of the shark.
I'm alive, the night calls, stars align, my mind draws.
Ben, we haven't begun to understand what the real safety issues are, you know. Yeah, I guess. And the gung-ho-ness with which we're approaching it at this point in time will mean that by March, April next year, we'll have people on bikes riding around in Sandton. And I've taken two approaches to it. One, I want to get the facts and figures that's going to inform us on that. So the research project is really about that. The second thing is, there's three things. The second thing is, I believe that the more people are on the roads engaging the space, the safer it becomes. My personal encounter with lack of safety has been not because of cars, and everybody always says the taxis are a problem. They're fantastic because they close the entire traffic to the side lane, which gives you a freer space to be. But the only time I've gotten real roasties has been a pedestrian, because they can't hear you and you're 100% silent, and you'd be surprised how many of them are on the street. So it's going to be about behavior change and awareness raising around the road not having the same hierarchy which we think it's got, you know, with these incredible 4-ton machines on them that on average loses 90% of the energy it combusts to on average transport 78 kilograms, you know. It's just a nonsensical space. So we're chipping away at it. And I think that, of course, the third thing is infrastructure. But we know that the bicycle lanes that are up at this point in time, we're seeing how they're being abused by other modes of transport, you know. They become parking zones for delivery. They become, the bike lanes between UJ and Wits are testament to this for us at the moment. So there's many little bolsters, but if we're going to do it right, we'll implement what's called complete road systems, which means that the cycle lane is separated from the main. And there's a couple of prime examples of this that's going to happen in private developments like Waterfall Estate, like Steyn City, where the private developers are putting in the money for that thing to happen. But I've learned not to wait for public sector on that. So, yeah, there might be some casualties to the cause, Ben. Right.
Do you think those Steyn will cycle?
I haven't him on a cycle, but I've been with a variety of people who've spoken to him about this. Eddie Eindhoven, who's he's the head of Hollard, he's a passionate daily commuter, and he's driving a lot of the infrastructure development. Seems positive that we'll get those big guys converted, but they're definitely not going to do it unless it's a recreational experience, because I find hooking them is through the recreational experience. But if we're talking about powerful people, you know that the Pro Shop bought Cycle Lab. You know that cycling is called the new golf. You've seen those hideous tights and the male camel toe, you know what I'm talking about. It's everywhere. And this makes the initial conversations with mid to senior level management at this point in time quite easy, you know, because they get it. They know, and they're passionate about it. Let's see. I don't know. Hello.
So I was targeting the south of Johannesburg, like which has a huge tourism market.
Yes, I think that there's two different things, of course, from the business model perspective on psychology. Round the base, ragamuffins. I did something wrong here. It feels like there's really something going to happen now. Let's stay with it. So we think that in the recreational side of this, it's very important to have little business models. So we developed this idea that we call one entrepreneur, one location, which is like a pop-up model to get transport, in this kind of transport, into tourism. And we're working with the DTI on trying to cross the T's and dot the I's on it, so that we can roll it out that way. But I'm more interested in engaging people from a different LSM and age group between 16 and 35, because I'm talking to 35s and up at the moment at some point in time. And next year we're doing a collaboration. I'm part of the Josie Hub on the other side. So I'm a young entrepreneur in the technology space. And it's really interesting because I don't have my own office, and for the first time it's not about how I want to be perceived, but it's a collaborative working environment with young technology startups. And we've started a collaboration project called Kasi Bike, the little X in the center, which is going to be part of the campaigns next year. I'm quite excited about it. You know, I think it's going to be quite hip, and it's going to introduce this idea to other people, you know, that I'm not speaking to at the moment.
So about making that appeal to young people like us who don't really ride bikes or aren't bikes.
That's coming. Watch this space. Hashtag gonna get there. If I don't have a breakdown first, you know, I've got to set it sailing. Clearly unstable at the moment, yes. Opening that overshare file always makes me feel like I'm given more. But there's going to be a ride a bit just now. We've got, maybe you'll say, but we've got some bikes, and I can show you a bit about what it's like.
So you get to ride the bike for free.
Yeah. I think you had to book a ticket, but maybe...
We've got some spaces.
There's 1 or 2 spaces that come. Yeah, or you just come and visit me on a Saturday. And, you know, every Saturday and damn Sunday at 10 and 12 for all my sins, I give the tours from here. I work 7 days a week on this. So if you want to come at 10 or 12 on a Saturday or Sunday, I do 3 tours. One is I call the Leafy Suburb Tour, for those that I think are definitely going to have an accident if they're on trafficked roads, you know. Billed as the Heritage Tour. I talk about a Herbert Baker or 2. The other one is called the Rejuvenation Hop, which takes you to Braamfontein, past Lieberman's, the Pottery. You know, that's, I propose it if you're young and hip. And then there's a big trek one which connects to Mabuneng, which I actually only have given once, but I pretend it's on our offering card. But I try and convince people not to do it because it's so far and it gets really hairy, you know, for the most part. But I'm over that too. I'm not going to do it next year. I'm exhausted. So maybe somebody else will give the tour. But anyway, there's a lot of opportunity to come and ride with me. There's a lot of opportunity to come and ride with me. Chop wood, carry water. Chop wood, carry water.